Up today is the Crkt, Columbia River Knife and Tool Company, M16-12 Zlek, or Zlek, as I like to say. It just kind of rolls off your tongue. I don't know if that's how you're supposed to say it, but that's how I like to say it. You know, I was never really into CRKT knives. I never had any. Didn't know much about them. I'd seen a few around, but had never really handled them. Didn't know much about them, and hadn't exactly ever thought of buying one, but one of my friends was nice enough to give me this one, and I've just found it to be a great knife, so I really appreciate the gift. Thank you. So this knife, like I said, the M16-12 Zlek, this knife is of the Kit Carson design, the M16 line, popular line with them apparently, some of their better selling knives from what I understand. And this is a knife that there are several variations of, 3 sizes of it, the 12, 13, and 14. That goes small, medium, and large. The 12 and 14 are both Tantos. The 13 is a spear point. I don't know why he made the mid-size version a spear point and not a Tanto, because I think I would have bought that one. The 14, which I would kind of like to get, is super huge, at least from the stats that I've seen. 9.75 inches, I think, open. 5.5 inches closed, and weighs 6.3 ounces, so it's a big knife. Probably a little bit bigger than I want to carry. This one, the smallest one, as you can see, nice small size in your hand. Aside from the 3 sizes, there are 2 color options, the black and the orange. Now these knives of this line are made in sort of the emergency rescue type roll because they have this little seatbelt cutter right here. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but that distinguishes them from some of their other knives. Now, oddly enough, also with these, the prices on these are a little bit different depending on the color. So this one, retail price, about $90. Street price, at least on Amazon, how I'm going with this, is $75. The orange version of this, same list price, but on Amazon goes for about $49. As far as I can tell, it's the same knife, just orange with a satin blade instead of the black. So that's kind of interesting. But like I said, I would probably get one of the bigger ones, but I'd prefer the Tanto over the spear point. So I think I'm just going to stick with this smaller one. So uses for this, you know, great everyday carry knife because it's nice and small, fits in your hand, fits in your pocket. Like I said, because of this seat belt cutter, you could push this into some type of emergency type roll, and it's nice and quick and open and sharp, and so you could therefore use it in a defensive type roll if need be, especially if you got one of the bigger variations. Size-wise, this one, just to get the quick stats out of the way, pretty small. The blade is 3 inches, as you can see there. The handle 3.3 inches, and open the full length 7.3 inches. And it weighs in at a hefty, it's kind of a chunky little 3.6 ounces. Kind of feels like there's some quality and heft to the knife when it's closed and you're holding it in your hand. So it's a nice design little knife. I've really enjoyed using it. Construction of this knife. So let's start with the handles. The handles are a glass reinforced nylon, and they are milled out here, which reveals the 420 J2 stainless steel liners. 420 is kind of a lower end steel, not great as a blade steel, but great as a liner steel because it's highly corrosion resistant. Probably have to soak it in some harsh chemicals to get it to start to corrode. So milled out handles here, saves probably a little bit of weight there. And this textured glass reinforced nylon has a nice little grippy texture to it. It is a nice feel. There are Torx bits in the back here to hold the spacer, kind of a partial flow through design. Torx bits on both sides. The tip, or the clip, it's a finished coated clip, so as you use it, it is going to wear a little bit. Not a big deal, but it's not a blued or hardened kind of clip. Parkerized, not blued or parkerized, but not a big deal. Just note that some of that finish will wear away over time, as this one started to a little bit. Tip is, or it's tip down only carry. The larger ones, the 13 and the 14, have a 4-way pocket clip so that you could carry a tip up if you want, but this was really designed to be used as a tip down carry, the way this goes in your pocket. Torx bits back here, up on the front here, the tensioning screw is a regular screw, which I have not had to touch because this comes very nice from the factory. And the blade is actually pretty decently centered. Haven't had to touch that either. On the back here, there's a carbide, tungsten carbide glass breaker if you need to break into the side window of a car. Again, a note here, as I mentioned in my Benchmade triage video, if you are going to use this to break into a car, you're going to grip it here, you're going to smash into the car, please put something over your hand. Put a pair of gloves on, wrap a towel around your hand so that you don't have to come to the ER after you punch through that window because you chopped your hand up putting it through the glass window. Just a tip if you have to do that, if you have to, and if you have something with you that you can do that with, that would make your hand happier for that matter. All right, so that's about it for the handle. Let's move on to the blade. The blade here, up here, these are more blade stops, not thumb studs. There is no way you can really get in there and push it open with those, so those are really just blade stops. The mechanism you open this is with this little flipper here. Now this thing has several purposes. So it is a seatbelt cutter here. It has this little cutout here, and all 3 or I guess 6 versions of this knife have that. I've carried this in the hospital some. I've not yet had a chance to cut any clothes off with it. I think because of its small size, it would be great for something like a seat belt, but getting that through the the bottom of a pair of jeans, I'm not sure how that would work. So just something to note there. It is a pretty small. I've seen some videos. Works great on a seat belt. On something bigger, not sure. So now to open it, it's the flipper. Just grab that, flip it open. It is a super smooth opening. So much that a lot of times when I'm carrying it and have this knife around, I just take it and I play with it because the opening, it almost feels like it's like an assisted opening because it just flips right open. So very nice. The lock on this, they have their auto lock as they call it. And the way that works is that they say this makes it into essentially a fixed blade with this auto lock engaged. So the way that it works is there is a liner lock here. The liner lock has a small pin right up here, and you cannot disengage that by pushing it over. The way to disengage that pin, take this little red lever here, push that back, and if you can see in there, that little pin moves up and out of the way, and when it's out of the way, you can then push that liner over and close the blade. So as you've seen me do in the video here a bunch of times, you can do that one-handed once you get used to it. Really not too bad. Pull it back, push that over, push the blade with your index finger, and you can close it. So the lock, it's nice. Once it opens, this little seatbelt cutter doubles as a finger stop. Get your finger there, it's not going to slide forward. And there's even, a hint of a sort of a finger choil here where those blade stops go into. Some jimping. There is some jimping on the liner lock. On the top here, there's some jimping on the top of the blade, although it's fairly mild and fairly flush with the top of the blade and the scales and the handle. The scales, now that we have this opened, or the scales, like I mentioned, are milled out, and the liner is not milled out. Obviously, the liner lock side can't be. The other side is not. It's just a solid black liner. The blade, this has the Tanto blade, obviously. On one side, it has the CRKT logo. On the other side, Carson Design M16-12 Zlek and the patent number. Like I mentioned, the mid-size version of this has the spear point if you're looking for that. The blade does come partially serrated, and this version is black. The orange version has the satin blade. Blade steel is AUS 8, so that will take an edge pretty well. Does pretty well when sharpened. It will, lose its edge a little bit easier than some of the harder steels, but the upside and downside of the softer steels is that they're going to be easier to lose the edge, but easier to sharpen compared to like an S35 or something like that. So it does pretty well sharpening, and it comes really sharp out of the factory. I've not had to touch this one compared to some of my other knives. So that's about it for this knife. Great little knife. Makes me want to consider some other CRKT knives because they are just nice knives and really not bad for the price. I really kind of want the orange one. Dig those orange knives, and may look into it. But check this one out, the CRKT M16-12 Zlek or Zlek.